Hello and welcome to my type of shit. Today you have me, Michelle, who's an ENFP, and we have a couple other people. And today we're going to be talking about the ENFJ personality type. So this should be a pretty exciting conversation. But with me we have Emily.
Hey guys, I'm Emily, or my YouTube is Pakoki. I'm an INFJ, Myers-Briggs, or an IEI in Socionics. And then we also have Shaun, aka Mech.
Greetings. I'm an INTJ. We're talking about ENFJs today. I don't know how exciting that is to some people or others.
Yeah, and I'm very interested. I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit before this, but we really wanted to save like our true feelings and stuff until the podcast started. But like, I'm very interested to hear Michelle and Shaun's interactions and like also their I guess the way they feel about ENFJs, because I have I feel like very different opinion, because ENFJs, spoiler alert, are my favorite personality type.
Damn, she dropped a bomb.
So I'm I wouldn't say biased, because I also know, so I know good and bad of every type. And actually some of the worst people, well, one of the worst people I know is an ENFJ. But also some of the best people I know are ENFJs. So it's like, it's definitely, every single personality can be good and bad. Every single personality can be healthy and unhealthy. But I just really admire ENFJs the most, above all other personality types. But I digress.
I think I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, the INFP is my favorite, and ENFJ is your favorite, and they use the exact opposite functions.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know
Interesting
if
stuff.
I have a favorite type.
Come on, you have every type's your favorite type.
Pretty much. I like all people. I do have some that I like more than. I feel like INFJ is probably like up there.
Damn. So, but you're implying that it could be categorized, in which case there would be a highest.
Well, I think Michelle can definitely say what her least favorites are.
Yeah, then she surely has a favorite. She just hasn't thought about it.
Well, she probably,
it's like, do you have a favorite friend? Like, you might have a few friends that are like contenders for favorite, but I mean, how can you have
I definitely have a favorite friend.
No, favorite's gonna change and adapt as
It's
you
true.
change and adapt.
Well,
But as they say,
one could be my favorite one day, and 2 hours later, it could be a different type,
yeah,
just depending.
I don't
That's
think
so
you're that
interesting.
fluid. I don't think you're that fluid.
No, but I actually think that that is maybe an NE thing, or like even FI, like that's so interesting, because like for me it's I'm very consistent with like the things that I like typically. But as far as ENFJs go, not spoken from, rest in peace, Pumpkin Pie Barnes, my cat. I don't know why I'm laughing at that, because he's not like, that's not laughable. He was almost 17, and I believe Pumpkin was an ENFJ. And I know some people are weird about typing animals, but I truly believe we don't care about you. We truly I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I truly believe that he was an ENFJ. But don't take my word for that as far as typing animals. But that being said, I tell people all the time, even when Pumpkin was still alive, I would say this years ago, is when Pumpkin unfortunately dies, which now he is dead, I want him to come back as one of my children, and he will be my favorite child.
Wow. Unbelievable.
That's a little messed up. You're already planning for your favorite child. I hope you only have one for their sake.
No! I want to have a lot of kids.
Oh my goodness.
This is at a new level. For the record, I don't think you could type animals, but didn't you say your other cat was ESFP?
No.
Dog.
Fleur, yeah, I mean, Henry, my dog, I do believe is ESFP.
But anyway,
Yeah, either
we're
way.
talking about ENFJ.
Yeah, her cat was
Pseudosciences.
ENFJ. What about it? She swears up and down. You ask her any day of the week.
Well,
she'll say
I
that.
mean, I guess my point with that is like, I love ENFJs so much that I'm already planning for an ENFJ to be my favorite child.
An ENFJ reincarnation.
Yes.
This is just.
But I mean, in a lot of ways, that does make sense. So, like, for those of you guys who are listening and don't know a whole lot about MBTI, the cognitive functions of an ENFJ are first extroverted feeling, then introverted intuition, then extroverted sensing, and then introverted thinking. And the thing about having that lead extroverted feeling is that, like, group harmony tends to be like a really high value. They don't necessarily all have that value because they can also be the type who wants to stir up people's emotions for the reactions that it gains. But you're going to see a lot of ENFJs who really like group harmony, especially like when they're more developed. And an INFJ in Socionics, their creative function is extroverted feeling, which would mean that they don't necessarily actively create those environments, but they feel very, very comfortable in such an environment. So it would make a lot of sense that you would enjoy being around a fellow FE user, especially one who's going to do the work of balancing the group dynamics as much as an ENFJ would.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I really admire, because I find that ENFJs, because they, I mean, obviously SE is not their fourth function, or like, I mean, they're not necessarily extremely great at SE, but they're still way better at SE than I am.
Right.
And I just find that ENFJs get shit done a lot more than I do. Like, I was actually, it's really ironic because I was talking to Megan Lavoda for a long time on the phone earlier today, which is just perfect because of we got ENFJ as our type. And the like,
I'm just going to throw out there that this is the first time Emily did the randomizer, and of
no,
course
I
we got
didn't.
ENFJ.
I did it for ISTP as
Sounds a
well.
little suspicious.
I
This
did
is
it as well for
suspect.
ISTP. No, I did as well. I know we can look at our chat and we will confirm this, Michelle. That is
Hey, you could have clicked
babe.
randomize as many times as you want to get the desired result. I'm just
I
saying.
did not do that though.
We're enjoying seeing you get so defensive today.
Dude,
Yeah, because they were accusing
it's so
me of being
easy.
FJ before this.
So, like,
In a joking way.
Mac was like, "Oh, Emily, you're an ENFJ," and she's like, "No, I'm not an E." Like, she just got so defensive. It was classic.
Well, I did think I was an ENFJ for the longest time, but I mean, I have to face the facts. I'm not an ENFJ as
Oh
much
my
as I want
gosh,
to be.
she's
I'm not an
forcing
ENFJ.
She's forcing herself. She's drilling it into her head, so she doesn't have to question it anymore.
No, I do question it. I do question it. I would love to be an ENFJ. I will just say this right now, because I just think they get shit done a lot more
What's
than
the
I do.
primary? What's the turning point where you realized you weren't an ENFJ?
When I really studied the cognitive functions.
Yeah, but there had to have been like a specific like
There
fact or something.
There was a turning point, and if you watched any of my videos, that I'm just kidding.
All right, relax.
You watched very obscure videos. So my friend Valerie, who I don't think is watching this, but she's an ENTP. We were actually driving. Like, I remember the distinct moment. I kind of always like questioned, because it was like I related to ENFJ because of course I took it on the I've taken on human metrics, I've taken it on other things as well. But of course, the one that I, so easy to take is the 16personalities.com one. And like I was reading the description and I resonated with most of it, but it wasn't completely that way. And I was like, I don't really think I'm this extroverted or something, or like there are certain things that I just didn't resonate completely with, but I was like, okay, well, it's good enough. And Valerie was like, we were driving to the Georgia Aquarium, and she was like, Emily, I don't think you're an ENFJ. I think you're an INFJ. And I was like, Valerie, I think you might be right. And then after that, I went into like a 2-month intensive study of the cognitive
gosh.
functions where it was like it was like hours a day I was studying the cognitive functions, and it was like crazy. And I was like getting my sister involved, and I was like, "Anna, listen to this, do that." And she was like getting really annoyed. But yeah.
The struggle.
Yeah,
The
but is there a
struggle.
specific trait that ENFJs have that you definitely don't see in yourself?
Not necessarily, because as Michelle was saying earlier, it's very like it's interesting because I think so for example, I think INFPs and INFJs maybe look more similar on the surface, just as maybe ENFPs and ENFJs can look similar on the surface. But then when you like really get to know like say an ENFJ and an INFJ together, like I don't know, like with Megan and like other ENFJs I know, it's like we come to the same conclusions about things. And this is like how the mirror relationship is in socionics, where we come to the same conclusions, but we just attack them at different angles, but they're very slightly different angles. And also, I find this so much, especially, and I'm just like shouting out Megan all the time in this video. You guys should subscribe to her channel. But she, like, I find with her where I'll have an insight about something, or she'll have an insight about something, and it's like we both come to the same conclusion, but it's like one of us will come to it sooner than the other, and vice versa. It's very interesting in that regard. And also, like, I just find like ENFJs have a way different way. I feel like not way different, but they have a different way of interacting with people where I feel like they are more forward facing, whereas I don't know if that makes sense. And then like INFJs, people tend to gravitate towards INFJs, whereas with ENFJs, they tend to have people gravitate towards them. And I don't think that makes sense.
Wait, hold on. Wait, what?
You just said the same thing. You
Yeah,
said
they're both.
INFJs have people gravitate towards them, and then ENFJs.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. So INFJs, like it's like people just gravitate towards them, whereas ENFJs make people gravitate.
Oh, okay. So there's a level of like their will brings people to them more so than an INFJ, where they're just like people are naturally attracted to an INFJ, whereas like an ENFJ is trying to pull people in, like a siren.
Yes. And I do find that typically, and this is not always the case because I know other, I don't think all ENFJs are dominant or all INFJs are submissive type people. But I do find with ENFJs, they're a little bit more assertive in the way they speak too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense with like their FE and SE, extroverted feeling and extroverted sensing, being much more strong.
Yeah.
Especially the extroverted sensing, because like that's like the forcefulness, that's like the willfulness,
Well, and I also find with ENFJs, they're way more concerned, at least from what I've seen, is they're more concerned with how people view them versus like an INFJ. So like I think ENFJs get more caught up in like, oh, does this person hate me or does this person like me or something? Whereas INFJs still have that thought. Like they may still have that thought, but it's not in the forefront of their mind. It might be in the back of their mind. Like I may have an idea that someone doesn't like me, but that's not something that like rules my thought process. Whereas with an ENFJ, it's like they have to like they're like that's like such in the forefront of their mind.
Well, and what's interesting is what you're describing is basically, and I know you haven't researched it that much, but I think you should more. But Dave's superpower system, he talks about EJs as being tribe above self and IJs as being control over chaos. And so you have both the control over chaos and the tribe above self, but your control over chaos is much more guiding your like everyday thought. Whereas the EJ, or like especially like an ENFJ, they would be thinking about tribe above self all the time.
Yeah. I also find, so like my friend Chaz, I do believe is an ENFJ, and I just came back from a music festival called Bonnaroo, and it's in Tennessee. It's pretty cool. But he was very much like it's just very clear. Like either way, he definitely leads with extroverted feeling, and like even if he's like an ESFJ, like both of those really make sense for me with him because you can just see the FE, like he's very much go with the group rather than like he's not going to make judgments about things. Like he's not, I mean, I don't know how to describe it. He's not going to be like, all right, like he's not going to use FI. He's FI ignoring. So he's going to try to do like what he feels the group would want, like go with the group
Right.
rather than do what he individually wants necessarily.
Is that bad?
It's just different than an INFJ. It's just their way of, I mean, ENTJs and ESTJs are the same, except theirs is more focused on the extroverted thinking side than the feeling side.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all EJs are kind of like that. It just depends if they're more feeler side or more thinker side.
Fair enough.
Well, I'm interested I mean, obviously, I just like ranted on, but I'm interested to hear what you and Mac think about.
I hardly know any of them. Like that's I mean, I have experience with some of them. I remember the one I did have one I sat next to in college, and she was more quiet than I thought she would have been. But I mean, she probably was more extroverted outside of class. Like class is boring. And then there's another one I know, and like she was like talking to like my good friend, and they never ended up dating. Like she really wanted to date him, he didn't want to date her, and then she ended up getting a boyfriend, and I had her on Snap, and she's still like she was so crazy about this guy. Like when you really see their true colors when they get in a relationship. She was like, it was way different than like the way an INFP would approach it, cause like she was just like showing him off all the time, and like you know what I'm saying, like
oh my gosh,
yeah, like posting hearts on like daily pics of him and shit. Like I was like, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
And and then they broke up or something, and then they got back together. So I don't know what to think. But yeah, that's about that sums up my experiences with ENFJs.
I mean, that sounds about like every high school relationship
yeah,
ever. So
yeah. Well, they were actually really young.
detailed.
They were young, yeah, I guess. I mean, that girl that I'm talking about is like 3 years younger than me, I think. Like I just knew her, and I don't know, but shit. Yeah, that's about my experience with them. I guess there's some online that I know of, but they do seem like to me they seem to be like the worst NF type. Like that's how I feel. Cause the ENFPs and the INFPs are like godly, and then the INFJ is good enough. Cause
oh my
god.
god.
And then like the ENFJ just doesn't get the job done for me. I don't know. I don't think they like me though. I don't know. Like obviously none of them
I mean, it makes a lot of sense given your like lack of extroverted feeling completely. I mean,
in Socionics, as Michelle and I were talking about before this, you would be you would have the supervision relationship with an ENFJ. Whereas
you guys say that in a way that like I don't know what you're saying, but it kind of gets me mad. Like, what are you saying?
Well,
what does that
you
mean?
could know if you actually studied socionics.
I think socionics is trash, but every time
It's not trash. You just don't understand it, so you like have to
I
justify
feel like
it
it's
by...
a worse. No, I that could be it, but I feel like it is a worse MBTI. That's me. But
No,
anyway,
it's not.
so you think it's a better MBTI?
I mean, I would not call it MBTI. It's better. It's a better typology system, in my opinion.
Damn. Okay. Anyway, back
I
to
think Myers-Briggs is a lot more usable, but that's gonna
yeah. That's
hopefully
all.
change in the future.
That's the thing is I only care about the practical
The
value.
utility of it.
Right.
Anyways, in socionics, you would be so ENFJs would be your supervisor, and you would be the supervisee. That is one of the more unfavorable relations in socionics, and of course, you can rise above that relation. I think, well, first of all, we were just talking about in the ISFP video that obviously Michelle is the supervisor for an ISFP, and she has a good relationship with her sister, and I'm the supervisor for an ESFJ, and I have really good relationships with ESFJs, but I can definitely see that relationship is not the best because it is a what's it called? Asymmetrical relationship. And as Michelle was pointing out earlier, you have a lack of FE, and but you also you have a lack of FE, and the ENFJ has very strong NI, so it's not like they see a clear lack within you. The supervision relationship is basically, it's similar to the benefit relationship in the fact that it's both asymmetrical, but in the benefit relationship, the benefactor to the beneficiary typically sees the beneficiary as having value, whereas within the supervision relationship, it just on the surface, and again, you can have healthy relationships with this relation, but on the surface, it's almost seen as the supervisee is like inferior to the supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
So I can definitely see why that would not be a personality type that you get along with, because INTJs are not really one for feeling inferior to other personalities.
I just think like I don't think they're interesting. Like compared to the other NFs that I like gawk over, all three of the other ones, I feel like the ENFJs. Then again, I don't have the largest sample size, but I'm just saying from what I've even read about the type, it doesn't do it for me. I'm not saying they're a bad type. To all the ENFJs out there, I probably would like you. I'm just saying you got to realize your competition here. We're talking about ENFPs. Like, come on now.
That's right. No.
Come on now. That's a god type. No, ENFPs are kind of like they are kind of worshipped though. I feel like that's like the type that's most commonly mistyped.
What do you mean?
ENFPs.
I don't necessarily think that.
I've met so many people back when I was in high school that like they would just test as ENFP, like and for no reason. Like I knew they weren't, but I don't know.
I would say a lot of people mistype. There's a few that
I guess
feel like
INFJ gets mistyped a lot too, probably.
Yeah, I would say my INFJ actually more so than ENFP.
That might be because all the ESFJs out or ISFJs out there. I mean.
Well, and ESFPs are all getting mistyped as ENFPs.
Yes, definitely.
Because the intuitive.
That happens too.
There is definitely a ESFP that I think Michelle and I know online. Or, well, they claim to be ENFJ, but I believe they're ESFP.
Wait, what about ENFJs being mistyped as ENFPs and vice versa?
I can definitely see that happening.
I can see that as well.
Because I think that ENFJs, despite their description, their description makes them seem like pretty serious people. But the thing about ENFJs is they tend to be like hyper and excitable, especially like younger ENFJs. Like, for example, my older sister is an ENFJ. And when I met her husband, every time I came over, he would be like, "You guys are the same person." And we look at each other and we're like, "No, we're not." But on the outside, we really put off a lot of like similar characteristics.
Yeah.
Except when you look closer, you can see like the pretty vast differences that are between an ENFJ and an ENFP. But that like JP divide on the outside isn't as obvious, except when you look at how they dress.
If you're looking at it without the cognitive functions lens, and you're only looking at it through like the base letters in the base Myers-Briggs formula,
Yeah. I feel like
the only difference between the type is their lifestyle preference. Like
right.
that's minus the functions, because
Yeah.
that is like pretty much what separates J and P. And
Yeah,
if you look at lifestyles of an ENFP, like they're like people, I don't feel like people conceptualize the word lifestyle in the way that I'm conceptualizing it in my head, but I have faith in you guys. Like when you think of the difference of the way that that is for an ENFP and the way that that is for an ENFJ,
yeah,
like it'll be much more clear to you the differences in that instance.
ENFJs are going to have much more clear singular goals. Like they might like potentiate a couple possibilities, but they're pretty much going to like pick one and stick to it. Kind of like an ENTJ. Like they get their vision in their mind and they play through it to the end. Like there's not much like wavering in their plan for their life and that kind of stuff. I mean, sure, they could think about different possibilities. They'll like accept when things come up in life that kind of like change those plans, but they're going to be much more singularly focused than an ENFP, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because Megan and Crystal, I was watching their video actually about like their typing service and stuff. And also Michelle and I know both Crystal, an ENFP, and Megan, ENFJ.
Mhm.
And I can see like they were even saying that a lot of people will see them as maybe very similar when they first meet them. But then when you really get to know both of them, you see how different they are. It's just like, say, an INFJ and an INFP. On the surface level, especially if you're just observing them from a distance, they're going to seem very similar. But when you get psychologically close to both of those types, you're going to realize that one drastically values FI versus the other. And it's the same thing for like ENFPs and ENFJs, just like how Michelle was describing. One values in extroverted intuition more than introverted intuition and vice versa. And one also prefers FI versus FE.
Yeah, that's where you're going to catch a lot of differences because like ENFPs can use FE,
yeah,
but we don't live that life of caring that much about the values of the whole group unless it's to like some kind of gain. And I know that sounds manipulative, but it's just kind of how ENFPs are. Because we value extroverted thinking over extroverted feeling, we're going to think what's the purpose of using the group values, like because this is what I want, this is what I think is the right thing to do. Can I convince the other people to think that, or should I just go with what I think is right? Whereas the ENFJ is going to feel like it's more assumed the right thing to do, and be more aware of what other people want and what they would think is the right thing to do. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that right, but I hope I am.
No, it does. You are. I think so because it's interesting because that you say that because even like at this trip that I went on with my friends, there I do have an ENFP and an ENFJ in a group. Chaz, ENFJ, Anna, ENFP, and Anna and Chaz, like it's funny because like they were both getting annoyed of each other for different things. But Chaz was not saying it directly for sure.
Right.
Chaz actually did not really say anything. I'm just assuming things from from interactions. But like for example, like with Anna, she would get annoyed of certain behaviors that were highly associated with FE. And she even realized that as she was saying it. Because she's studying Myers-Briggs and Socionics. She's like, wow, like I really am getting annoyed of Chaz's FE here because he's like just going with the group and like I don't like that. Or it's interesting.
Yeah. And honestly, coming from the perspective of an ENFP, extroverted feeling is probably like one of my least favorite cognitive functions personally.
Right.
That's so
Um,
interesting.
That
Because
function,
I
like,
love extrovert feeling.
yeah, of
oh,
course, because you
wow.
have it though. Like that's like
Well,
me
no,
with
it's in her valued because I think anyone who has it in their valued for functions, which is like your ego type, like any INFJ, ENTP, etc., you're gonna like FE, and I think that's kind of the difference. But I mean, it is definitely
dude,
like my least
extroverted feelers
favorite.
drive me nuts. They drive me
There's
insane.
something about it, even though I know that this is not true, there's just something about it that feels so disingenuous.
See, I don't like that. Okay, I don't think that's it for me. For me, it's like it's too out there. Like it's overwhelming. Like extroverted feelers kind of like they do overwhelm me. Like it's too much emotion outwardly. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like where it's like they're kind of like puking it on you, or like how I was saying that girl, like she posts like, you know what I'm saying, like a pic of her boyfriend like every 3 days with like hearts. Like that stuff drives me
Right.
insane. Like that's what I feel like INFJs like even have a vibe like that too, where like they'll express that love outwardly, like that kind of, it just, I don't know why I kind of like to blend in, you know what I'm saying? I like to just not be put out there, you know. I and that the extroverted feeling I'm not like obviously it's like I'm around a lot like of ESFJs and stuff, so like I have enough experience with extroverted feeling. It's cool in certain ways. Like for example, let's say if it's like my middle sister's birthday, like she's an ENTP, then the young sister who's an ESFJ and my mom who's an ESFJ, like they kind of set the tone of the room. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
that's cool to me. Like I like the vibes they put off from extroverted feelers sometimes. But sometimes like when it's directed towards me, I just dislike it cuz it's too much. You know, that's basically what I would say about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think INFJs really do that as much.
I
I
think
might be wrong about it.
comparing, okay, I would agree with you, but I think when I instantly disagree when I start thinking about you compared to an INFP, because INFPs, like they'll never, or people with FI, like they don't do that. The love is all inward. You know what I'm saying? Like
That's
it's
not true, though.
like I
That's not
feel,
true.
okay. Obviously we're talking about generalizations here. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not always going to be the case. What I'm saying is like introverted feeler is obviously an introverted thing. Like it's inward. That means like they feel the function inwardly. Whereas extroverted feeling is like that emotional part of it is outwardly. And so I can't, like I personally prefer the inward emotion. That's just me, you know? Like I think you guys as extroverted feelers do outwardly display that emotion in a lot of ways.
I would agree with that actually. I do think that you're much more likely than an FI user to express your emotion outwardly, especially if it's a dominant extroverted feeler. Like I think it would be really hard for them not to express
Yeah,
outwardly.
like ENFJs would be a good example.
But that does make them, I mean, from my personal experience, that makes them really great actors and musicians
Yeah.
to have lead extroverted feeling because they can put that emotion out there. And like with music, you don't have like a whole lot to work with to create emotion and atmosphere except yourself. Like especially like say like an opera singer. Like you have yourself and the way that you're expressing the emotions is the only way that you're getting the emotion across. Like how you use your voice and how you move your face is all like, and if you're just listening to it, all you have is how you moving your voice. And extroverted feelers tend to be really good at like opera and music in general because they that like connection of expressing feeling through the musical instrument, especially like with voice. Like in high school, I knew a lot of ENFJs and well, specifically ENFJs, and I think that's also because of the extroverted sensing, like having that external awareness on top of having extroverted feeling makes it even more easy for them to excuse me, to be good like to be good performers, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, who do you think is an ENFJ that is a performer? I mean, I think the most obvious ENFJ, well, this isn't she's not a performer necessarily. I guess in a way, is Oprah, who is so well known across the world.
Right.
But to me, she is like the poster child of ENFJ.
I would agree. I think I think Ryan Reynolds is an ENFJ.
Oh, interesting. I could see that.
I think there's a lot of ways that you can see that, like in his interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
There's another one that I was just thinking. Now their name is evading me. If I think of it again, maybe I'll just start looking it up and seeing.
Do you have like a maybe a singer in mind? Or an artist?
My voice teacher in college.
Okay.
Which isn't really helpful. I know her name is Tamara, but I don't know her last name.
See, to me, if I had an ENFJ teacher for me, or just someone that was like a motivator, like if I had an ENFJ mentor or like teacher or something like that, that would be like so perfect. I would love that so much. And I would feel so encouraged.
Their stereotype on this one website I pulled up randomly is called The Mentor.
Yeah.
Well, see. They named someone that I don't agree with.
Who did they say?
Oh, hold on. I'll have to back up and find it. Okay, none of those are helpful. Jennifer Lawrence, which I highly disagree with.
What do you think she is?
I think she's an ESFP.
Yeah, I can see that. You know what? When I was like more rudimentary at like typology, I could see why people typed her as ENFJ, but no, I do not think that Jennifer Lawrence is an ENFJ.
My little sister watches Jennifer Lawrence like at like interviews and stuff, and she's like, "That woman is my soul." Like, and I'm like, and what she means by that is she relates so much to this woman. Like, and my sister can definitely relate to the SEFI-ness of her. And I think it's pretty obvious that she's not really valuing FE, but that's just my personal opinion.
I could actually agree with you. But
oh, Morgan Freeman. Wait, no.
You know one thing weird about Jennifer
Nelson
Lawrence?
Mandela.
Yes.
I could see Nelson Mandela. And also there's a Martin Luther King has been typed as both ENFJ and INFJ. I honestly could see both. But it's hard to say. Like, oh yeah, Joe Biden typed as ENFJ. I could see that.
I think it's just not fair to type people who don't live anymore.
Yeah, that's hard.
All we have is very limited, especially back in those days. Like, they had to have a specific presence on the media, and like, especially someone like Martin Luther King Jr., his presence was so practiced that he could be a lot of many different personality types to have such a presence, you know?
Well, that's actually a strong argument. I was gonna dispute you, but that's pretty strong. I don't know. I guess you're right. But I feel like there should be enough footage of him to be able to decipher it.
I think that his values scream ENFJ.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that he is an ENFJ.
Okay, so from what Martin Luther King is from Georgia. And I actually went to his childhood house, and like they were talking about him, what he was like as a child, and you know, some maybe not so good things about him. And good things obviously. He does remind me of a lot of ENFJ children I know. Like when they were talking, and I didn't really relate to how he was as a child. And I'm not saying that all INFJs are the same as me or like, you know, stuff like that, but I am more on the lines of, and I could be wrong, but I'm more on the lines of him being an ENFJ versus an INFJ. One person also, I'm actually looking at IDR Labs right now, which used to be celebritytypes.com. But I think also Reese Witherspoon is an ENFJ. I can definitely see that from her.
You don't think ESFP?
Not Reese. I don't see Reese as an ESFP.
Maybe I'm just too messed up from seeing her in movies where she plays ESFP.
She definitely does play ESFP characters, but she also, like, her as a person, I do believe is an ENFJ.
Oh, I could totally see Bob Saget. I was like not even thinking about who that was.
What are you looking at?
I'm kind of just perusing Google, just looking
I see.
at the many different options that are coming up.
One thing I was gonna say though, for some reason, despite how famous she is, I don't know why Jennifer Lawrence doesn't have Twitter. Most celebrities have Twitter. She actually doesn't have social
She
media.
really
I
does
guess.
not have. I can see her not wanting that. I mean, to be honest, again, doesn't.
We need to
value
talk
that.
about types that don't like social media, like that. Like my ENTP sister says, like the world would be better without social. I never understood that. I disagree with that 100%. I think people with S. I don't know. I think SI might like it like more.
We can talk about that in depth. Like, I have feelings. I think it's a means to an end for some things, and in this day and age, you can't ignore the need for it if you want to have a business. But again, let's not get too far into that conversation. We're talking about ENFJs. Speaking of ENFJs on social media, I'll make that segue because that works. ENFJs are long-winded. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
They take a while to say what they need to say. But, I mean, they're trying to be as accurate as they can be, so you can't fault them for that. But they are pretty long-winded.
All right. I got the pros and cons here.
Okay.
Wait, we're already going into the pros and cons?
Already, man. We've been going for 40 minutes.
No.
100%.
No. I think we should talk about maybe our experiences and why certain people do not like ENFJs.
What do you mean? You want to talk about why I don't like? I told you I don't hate ENFJs. I think I'd prefer talking to ENFJs over almost all like I'd say at least 6 or 7, 8 types. Like they're not that bad.
The middle of the road.
They're just the worst NF. That's all I said. I didn't say, and they have harsh competition. You gotta understand that.
Well, I also don't think they're the worst.
Yeah, they're your favorite type. Of course,
one thing I do find it interesting, though, I will have to say this is. With ENFJs, it's just like for me, INTJs, because also INTJs are one of my favorite types too. And they may I actually may think that INTJs are my second favorite.
I like INFJs, but
with ENFJs, like I have met some really good ENFJs, and I have met some very evil ENFJs.
Ooh, she's got to spill this right now.
I mean,
tell us about the evil ENFJ.
So
evil is a strong word.
Okay,
no,
not evil. Okay,
Come
we
on.
won't say evil. I mean, even though the person I'm talking about is actually a sociopath.
Okay, well then what's wrong with using words the way they're meant to be used?
Okay.
If they're evil,
I wouldn't say that all sociopaths are evil though.
I don't believe
you might think that this one is evil though, so I don't think you should be.
He definitely did some horrible stuff, like to many people.
I could see ENFJ like if we're gonna use the word evil, I could see an evil ENFJ doing some damage. I could see them racking up a tab.
I think they could hurt somebody the most if they
could hurt someone, a lot.
The thing about ENFJs that something I really admire is, okay, so like I find with me, I admire ENFJ leadership style above all else, really. And
see, that's what I don't like.
I love ENFJ leadership style. And it's interesting because I think that I can be a pretty good leader as well. I will just say that this experience stirs from like simulation teams and like Model United Nations, Model European Union, stuff like that. Which is basically simulating the United Nations or the European Union. In Model UN, there were many different personalities. And one of my good friends, my sophomore year, we actually were partners at a conference and we were playing Palestine. He is an ENFJ, I believe. And this is the bad ENFJ that I'm going to talk about. Or the not so, in my opinion, not so great ENFJ. He was very good at persuading people on a group level. Like, get him in a room and get him in front of a group, he could persuade people to like do anything.
That's
And
cool.
he had so many people like wanting to like follow him and do stuff. But
You've
the
seen
issue
right
is,
through it though, as the INFJ.
well, the issue is I mean, if he was a good person, and I'm not saying he's a bad person, but I do think
Come
he's a
on.
sociopath. If he had like good intentions, yes, that would be amazing because he could like really persuade people to do some good stuff. But he did not have good intentions, and he used his leadership to get women and to do other things that were not so great. And even, I mean, I actually had a restraining order against him.
Boom.
And
She
maybe
dropped
one
it.
day I'll talk about that story, but I was so afraid to even like talk about it at the time, because there were many people in college that knew him, because he was so like popular, so to speak, and we were so engulfed in the same community. But basically, when I got the restraining order against him, he was kicked out of Model UN, because he couldn't be within, I think it was 50 feet or 500 feet, I forget, of me. And he went around telling people that we got into a fight. And that's why he left Model UN. He like told all these people that I was like, he just basically spread false rumors around.
Well, I mean,
And
he has
I
to say something public. I mean, everyone has to say something publicly. So on his end, he had to come up with something. Like if people come up and say, "Hey, why'd you get?" He has to have a story.
Yeah, but
What's he gonna say? Like,
he
oh,
didn't have to like bring me into it. He didn't have to do that. But
wait. So
he
I'm just trying
made
to
up
figure
an
out how this.
elaborate story.
Okay. Oh. I guess I could see an NI user like that making up an elaborate story. He probably just, yeah, I guess, I don't know. He
Well,
probably
and
was.
because I didn't go around telling people why he left and the fact that he had a restraining order and he couldn't be in the same room as me, he went on to, I mean, the next year I decided to leave Model UN, and I also decided not to, during the time, I decided not to press charges with the school and get him kicked out of the school because I didn't want to ruin his life. He like ended up leading that organization, and basically so many people thought that he was like Jesus or something. Yet he was being very corrupt and using his power for evil, in my opinion. Like I said,
Damn,
taking
Michelle.
advantage of innocent women, and I don't know. It was not a good situation, but that story is a lot more elaborate than that.
She's saying evil. She called him evil.
But
I heard.
But at the same time, I love ENFJs, and some of them are the best people ever. So it's interesting.
Damn, that's a crazy story. I mean,
Well, that is not even a little bit of the story. That is just like a snippet.
You're leaving these people dry though. We got pros and cons to go over.
Okay.
All right, the pros and cons last longer and longer each week because we actually are getting, like, I don't know, we're getting better at it. All right, people. Nearly all ENFJs will recognize the following characteristics in themselves. They should embrace and nourish these strengths. Making others feel valued and important. See,
Yes.
like, I already don't like that. Like, like I don't know, man. Like that, like it already is just. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. I gotta be biased at this point. Quickly seeing the positive and negative aspects of a human situation. Okay, that's good. Expressing their feelings clearly.
I think so. I think ENFJs are a lot more clear with their emotions versus an INFJ. Like I said, they're more assertive and more directed in the way they are versus an INFJ. Like INFJs are very changeable in a lot of ways and also very indirect. And
yeah, and I don't think INFJs really like talking about their feelings that much.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable with it.
Fair enough. Offering loyalty and commitment to partners, family, and workmates.
Yes.
Yeah, probably almost to a fault.
Trying to always find the solution which works for everyone.
Yeah, I think that is
Yeah.
both a strength and a weakness because sometimes they can't move forward if everybody doesn't agree.
Damn, well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I would never have thought of that. Encouraging humor and self-expression in others.
Well, I think this also goes back to the like what Michelle was talking about actors. That ENFJs make for good actors, and I think they do value that in other people. They like to see it. I mean, my friend Chaz, like he's very expressive and very much he gets energy from people acting like weird and odd around him. Like when I'm around Chaz, like when it's just the two of us, and I feel like this is fucking why people think that we're dating like all the time. People think we're dating. It's because like we both like bring that FE and out in one of you thought out.
Getting a little tongue-tied, are we? Wait. Why aren't you dating? Okay, no, continue.
We aren't dating because there's many things, but anyways.
Yeah, so she didn't answer. No, it's all good.
Anyways, we do bring that FE out in each other, and it makes it very expressive. And I do think we both like that in one another because we can be very weird with one another, and like people are probably like, "What the fuck are these people doing?" But yeah,
Dude, this is a weird type. FE is just weird.
I
Although
know.
FI is weird too. I don't know, but I don't like emotions. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's be
Let's
real.
move on.
That's the real truth of it all.
That's the tea.
Finding ways to help others fulfill their needs. Whatever. Affirming positive community values. And
yeah, which is one of the things that, I think makes them less desirable to me, I mean, it can be good in that they want like good community values, but it can also be harmful because it might not always be right. I mean, maybe more so with ESFJs, but that's
Emily would agree with this one. Naturally falling into leadership roles within their community.
Yes.
All right, now we got the ENFJs who develop their NI. To the extent that they can see possibilities within their perceptions, will enjoy these special gifts. Understanding and empathizing with the feelings of others, realizing where they are coming from. I feel like that's just an NI thing.
Yeah.
A talent for creative expression which can turn ordinary things and situations into something magical. What the hell does that mean?
being a performer.
I mean, I think that kind of goes into what I just said about like my friend Chaz and I. Like, I do think that like when we're together, like even with other friends, I think it does like the emotions are just a lot more elevated. Like the whole atmosphere is just like heightened in a positive way. But then again, like I said, I love ENFJs. So
fair. The ability to see many facets of a problem and the many ways it might be resolved for the best.
I think that right there is highlighting the fact that ENFJs will use any more than an INFJ. Like an INFJ will kind of like try to ignore it as much as possible, but an ENFJ, especially like we're talking more developed, they'll be much more willing to look into the any possibilities.
yeah.
Interesting.
No, I agree with that. I think I come across way more stubborn than I'm using Chaz as an example because I interact with him the most out of all the ENFJs besides Pumpkin, but rest in peace. Yeah, he's a lot less stubborn than me about certain things. I'm a lot more, no, this is what even though I'm super indirect, it's like, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but I think you're right.
Changing the mind of an INFJ is a very difficult thing to do.
It is, as many, especially in romantic situations, like, yeah. I'm really bad at that.
This next one is fascinating. The ability to The ability to make creative and valuable use of time spent alone.
I think so. I think ENFJs really get into their NI, like when they do that, and they are very good at like planning stuff. Like I'm so impressed with Megan and Crystal, but I know that Megan did a lot of like the super planning stuff for like their typing service, and like it's crazy going back to the tweets and social media. As Michelle was saying about long-windedness, I'm always amazed when I look at Megan's like tweets. I'm like, how the fuck do you like come up with these tweets like that? Like, how are you like pushing them out like that, cranking them out? And I think it's
Yeah.
it's admirable to me. But
What else? I got one more here. Openness to the spiritual connections between all things.
I think so.
I think that ENFJs are some of the more likely to be kind of hippie-like.
I feel like
Yeah.
ENFPs more. That's just my opinion.
I
Oh.
think it depends on which side of. I think because all NFs can be very hippie. It's just which kind of hippie, and I feel like ENFJs are gonna be in that like spiritual, like everyone's connected. I don't know.
I think ENFJs are more into like the psychic realm.
Exactly.
Because of NI, like valuing NI. So.
Dude, what the hell, dude? They don't have a list of cons, dude.
Shut up.
Swear.
This page has been so good.
Unreal. I know, so
We'll
consistent.
just have to come up with our
No,
own.
they do. They do have a wall of text. I don't know if I want to avoid it. Let's see this. There's actually just one paragraph. Most of the weaker characteristics found in ENFJs are due to their dominant extroverted feeling, overvaluing what they see as objective values in the external world, and thereby judging too much by the needs of others, or by appearances. This is primarily due to the ENFJ having not fully adapted to their introverted intuition function sufficiently for them to be able to discern the vast range of ways in which they might be missing the underlying needs within themselves and being misled by such appearances. The ENFJ naturally looks outward to find value and satisfaction. And whilst it is essential that this direction be taken to fulfill their primary need of relaxation and comfort, without the supportive balance of a well-developed introverted intuition function, ENFJs can overvalue the external world to the point where they lose sight of themselves, becoming fixed in their judgments about people and the world.
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's
true.
like the thing that drives me most insane about ENFJs is that last statement. Like I've been like waiting for us to bring this up because that is like the thing that bothers me the most about ENFJs that are, and this is why they are not my favorite type, is because many of them can be like this. And like I said this off the air, but I think that Megan is a really good example of a healthy ENFJ. But she's one of the few that I have found that's like very truly healthy, because many of them really do have this problem, and I would consider it a problem where like how do I put this into words? Yeah, so becoming fixed in their judgments about people in the world. So that is why they have the stereotype of social justice warrior, because they're like, this is wrong, it needs to be fixed. And they get so fixated on that.
That's
on
hilarious.
That, like, their idea of something that needs to be fixed, that they don't understand how people don't see it. They don't understand how anybody could question that. And they like push that agenda onto other people without really hearing the needs of other people. And so like it said earlier that one of their needs is they take in the needs of others so much. And I think that like a really unhealthy ENFJ would be like obsessed with fixing the world, the whole world or the whole society or whatever it is, and see this judgment and this like thing that's wrong and not see anything else but how that's wrong. And anybody who comes in here and goes against that, even if it's only slightly, they'll see every way in which that they're going against that idea. And I think INFJs can do this too, to a certain degree, but I've definitely seen it pretty a lot in ENFJs. I'm sorry, I just had to get that out because
I think it's good that you
my
said this.
least favorite trait about ENFJs, and I think that if an ENFJ wants to work on themselves, this is what they should consider looking at, because you can get a lot more people to go with you on your ideas if you're more open to debating them and talking about them instead of just assuming that people should see them and understand them. Okay.
Dude, anyone who's made it this far is about to get some fire. Like, this is something we should have been doing this whole time, but I guess it would have made all the podcasts longer. But this same personality page actually has a secondary page made for each type, and it's about, like, their relationships. So I'm going to read out, basically they give a much more condensed version of pros and cons with X, Y, or Z type within a relationship, or when they're in a relationship. And since I don't have any cons to read, actual cons, outside of the initial, flaw we just read there, and they do have an explanations of problems, but I don't want to put people to bed here. I'm going to read some of these bullets here, and yeah, it should be good. Let's read the cons then. Cons of ENFJ, or ENFJ weaknesses. Most ENFJs will exhibit the following weaknesses with regards to relationship issues. Tendency to be smothering and overprotective.
I can see it.
Yeah.
That is one thing that would bother me. Tendency to be controlling and or manipulative. See, this doesn't bother me. But that is definitely a con to, like, other types. Like, certain types hate that.
But isn't that, like, when you took the, like, what kind of evil
Yeah,
are you
relax. Don't put me out there like that. Come on. Chill out. Don't pay enough attention to their own needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's kind of actually what you were just saying, right?
I do actually find with ENFJs, just like INFJs in a lot of ways, but even kind of more so with ENFJs, is they neglect doing certain things. Like, I think generally they are more likely to neglect, let's say, taking a shower, like certain things that, like washing their face, like certain things that other types don't really. And I guess instinctual variance can play a role too, but I do find with a lot of ENFJs that I know, especially ENFJ women, they just don't take care of themselves the same way as, like, other types do. I don't know.
I think what you're talking about is that kind of like SI blind spot.
Yeah.
Like having very weak and undervalued introverted sensing and self-care and self-aware. Anyway.
Anyway, yeah, I guess I agree with Emily. I could see this happening. I think this is an extroverted feeler thing, but ENFJs probably would do it even more so. Tend to be critical of opinions and attitudes which don't match their own.
I think that was exactly what Michelle was just saying.
That is so annoying.
That is in so in many ways.
That's a very undesirable. Oh, yeah. This is. I'm trying to think of an example in my head here, but
that is one of my least favorite traits, but probably because I have extroverted intuition as my main function. Like, I want to consider everyone's point of view.
Well, it is a form of closed-mindedness.
Yeah. My least favorite.
Because even if they're not verbally disagreeing with you or disputing you, they're displaying negative emotion on the fact that you're not agreeing with them, which is implying that they just.
I will have to say that even though, again, it's like I do love ENFJs, they have like this. They have a different kind of spiteful quality than, say, even an ISFP, like I was describing. Yes, ENFJs, when they're spiteful, they're very, like.
No one wants to be around that. Like, I'm just saying it.
It could be a big drama queen situation.
Yeah.
My stepmom is an ENFJ, and I've witnessed, not even just from her, but from other people, like a very, like, some heavy spiteful moments that are just, like, so extreme. But yeah.
Yeah, sometimes unaware of social appropriateness or protocol. This isn't mentioning clothing like the FI user. This is more of social. Like, there is a such thing as social protocol.
Right. Which I guess would come out when they're in that mode where they want to be spiteful. I could also
see it when they're trying to be overly jolly. Like, FE users do that shit. They try to change the mood in the room And like
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here and like, dude, that they can't see because my face is just like robot. Like I got the same face. They can't see that I'm really annoyed with their attempt of trying to persuade my emotion in a particular direction. But I'm really annoyed with their attempt of trying to persuade my emotion. And like I mean, obviously there's now here's the thing though. Most of the time it's not like that because it actually works. Right? A lot of the times they actually do control the mood in the room, so they will have an effect on my emotion, even mine or other people's emotions. But when it doesn't work, yeah, this stuff happens where they just look like an ass trying to make the room have a mood that it just no one, like no one wants to have that.
Right.
Of course that's a con. Extremely sensitive to conflict, with a tendency to sweep things under the rug as an avoidance tactic. Oh my god, this is true. Actually, this is true. I've seen an ENFJ do this actually. I've just realized there's this other ENFJ. But yeah, I've seen this happen. They do this in the weirdest way. This is such a weird thing. They'll literally sweep it under the rug. Like there's no other way to say it. Like
Yeah.
it's not like the NFPs, the ENFPs, the INFPs. That's not what INFPs and ENFPs do. The
Can you like give
ENFJs,
an example?
like if you guys have an argument, they'll like it's almost like it never. They'll just pretend that shit didn't like. It's the weirdest shit.
Oh.
Like it's like it's not good. It's an avoidance tactic. Yeah, like
Uh,
if that's what it says, it's an avoidance tactic. If I come up to an ENFJ and I'm like, let's say I'm in a relationship with one, and I got a problem, or we start bitching or getting an argument, like like they'll do that as an avoidance tactic of the problem. Like they don't want to confront the problem. You know what
I
I'm
don't
saying?
think that's necessarily true. What I do think that ENFJs do, and I've seen it so many times with so many ENFJs in my life, is what they will do, it's like I actually noticed this across the board with ENFJs. They use their mouth a lot when they're like when there's some type of discomfort, or like their head in general. Like they may do like this weird like head twitch, or like maybe uh move their lip in a kind of aggressive way, or
Mm,
like do like a weird biting of the lip or something like that,
I
like
could see that.
where
Yeah.
it's like it's just very, to me, I can tell that they're frustrated or annoyed from a situation, but they do not address it.
Yes.
And like they will, I mean, they will address it later on, but sometimes it's in a spiteful way, or sometimes it will just, yeah, actually, you know what? I mean, I'm gonna call out Chaz right now because Chaz is the I love you, Chaz, but
Yes,
I'm
you've
calling
been
you
called
out.
out.
Chaz does the weird lip thing, biting of the lip thing as well. Like he just does this weird thing with his face when he's like upset, like annoyed by something. And like I notice it every single time that he's
Yeah.
annoyed. And anyways, and my stepmom does a similar thing as well. But I'm gonna use Chaz as an example. When Chaz is drunk, because for the most part, he is very like go with the flow as far as like social things, and he will not really call out social things. He's very much a people pleaser in a lot of ways, to a fault, but we're working on it. Both of us are people pleasers. Anyways, I remember one time I was dating this guy who I believe is an ISFJ, and he was not so keen on him at the time. And when he was drunk, he was very spiteful towards him, and like said that he was short, and like kind of
Oh wow.
yeah, it was interesting. But it was like the tea
Dang,
like started
Chaz.
to spill as he like had lowered his inhibitions, or released his inhibitions.
Um, you know what's so interesting is so my sister and I are both FI in our top two. Um, and we've talked about this before, that one of our like number one pet peeves is when people say things are fine, but they're treating you like they're not, and you like they won't talk about it. Like
That's what this shit is talking
I
about.
I don't like conflict at all. Okay,
Yeah, that's a known thing. That's a known thing.
my Enneagram would show you that I'm like one of the most conflict avoidant people ever, but that is more conflicting to me than just talking about it. I would rather either get space and be away from the person, or talk about it.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what you guys do. You guys reserve yourselves. Like,
I cannot be around somebody who's like that, who's like saying they're not mad when they clearly are. Like, that drives me nuts.
this though, I let me know in the comments, guys. Someone comment this. Like, this extremely sensitive to conflict with a tendency to sweep things under the rug as an avoidance tactic. Like, tell me you guys have seen this, because this is the weirdest shit. And it's so I'm not. It's really what's fascinating to me about it is like not the conflict itself or during. I'm not talking. This is not talking about during. This is talking about after. Like, it's like a certain thing they do after conflict was supposed to happen, and it's very weird how it plays out.
My coworker did that to me. Oh my god.
Yeah, see.
And I sat here, I wrote this like whole thing. I made us talk about it though, I think, because for like a week we didn't talk about it. Like a week.
Yeah.
That is so funny. I'm just now realizing that is exactly what she did to me.
Is she an ENFJ?
Oh yeah. Oh,
I think my most like the majority of interactions that I've had with ENFJs in that regard have been from my stepmom, which makes sense because, well, besides again Pumpkin, which he's a cat, so he was spiteful and he had, you know, certain tendencies, but he wasn't like the same as like human where like you see the full scope of everything. With my stepmom, I mean, I've known her since I was 10, so we've been on a wild ride of different things, and we have a lot in common, but also there are times where, you know, things were not always the best. And yeah, definitely have seen that from her so many times. But I think I do a similar thing as well when in a conflict situation. I'll say, I'm fine. I think I will say that, but mostly I'll just be like, I don't want to talk about it, or I want to be alone. Like, that's what I'll say.
That's what INFJs do. They go and
I
they
don't
be
think
alone when they're
I don't think
mad.
I really say I'm fine. I might say, I mean, I think I make it pretty obvious that I'm not fine. Like, if I do, I think I'll say it in a very robotic tone.
Yeah, you can't miss it.
And then want to be alone. Like, I do not want people around me in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, this is wrong though. Like, but like the way like INFPs and ENFPs handle conflict is toxic too. Like, it's not good. You guys,
we all have our problems.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's all good. You guys, this sweeping things under the rug thing is unique to the NFJs though, or at least compared to the NFPs. All right, so we got tendency to blame themselves when things go wrong, and not give themselves credit when things go right.
I agree.
Yes.
Well, and
that can't be good.
To go back on, like, so for Megan Lavoda, I think she's a good example of this. She has told Michelle and I several times that she doesn't understand, or she doesn't really grasp her level of like how she impacts people all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, she doesn't really see that within herself all the time. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing where people aren't completely aware of the impact. We got their sharply defined value systems make them unbending in some areas.
I think that kind of goes back to the other point that made me upset. So that's pretty much just a different way of wording the same thing.
Yeah. And
I do find with ENFJs, just like how with INFJs, we can come off as kind of prudish a little bit about certain things. Like, I find with ENFJs even more so, like, if there's like a rule that you should, like, for example, in the US, and just like most places, if you drink and drive, that's like, you know, obviously not good. But I have found with ENFJs especially, and not all ENFJs, but it's kind of a trend, is like, doesn't matter who they are, like, if they have one thing of alcohol, they're like, oh, I can't drive. Like,
oh, that didn't stop my sister.
But like, I mean, I've found that, and maybe it's for certain things, and it might be to the individual, but there's like certain weird rules that
they have
like
values and they
ENFJs
don't
are
break
very like stickler to, and they will not like deviate from that.
Yeah, that's what it said. They're sharply defined value systems. Like,
Yeah.
just think of what that's saying. You
I
know? So,
know. That's why I just said the example.
yeah,
I was just.
that's
I have
funny. No, you're that was
my sister has just done the exact opposite.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
all.
That's good. It's actually a good thing you said that. They may be so attuned to what is socially accepted or expected that they're unable to assess whether something is right or wrong outside of what their social circle expects.
I agree.
Yes.
That's a
And
weird ass.
I
Huh?
do think that ENFJs at the same time, even though they have like these weird, really value systems, I also think that ENFJs can easily be, not all, but I think that ENFJs are oftentimes likely to be peer pressured into things,
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, the whole people
especially
pleaser
when they're
shit.
younger.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have strengths here, ENFJ strengths in relationships, but we've been going for a while. I'll just read them a couple real quick. Good money skills, driven to meet others' needs, strive for win-win scenarios, loyal and committed. They want lifelong relationships. That's definitely true. I think if you want a long-term relationship, go with an ENFJ over an ENFP.
Go with an NI user.
Oh my
An
Yeah.
god.
NI dom, like either in the first or second. If you want long term.
Yeah, long-term is much better for, yeah. Able to move on after a love relationship has failed, although they blame themselves. Interesting.
I see that. Yeah.
Fun to be with, lively sense of humor, dramatic, energetic, optimistic, warmly affectionate and affirming, motivational, inspirational, bring out the best in others, very perceptive about people's thoughts and motives, good verbal communication skills. I don't know, pretty good type I think overall. I just think like I just don't mesh with them, you know? I just
Yeah.
wish I could mesh with them better, but they just don't do it. Like the FE2 is way too strong.
Yeah.
Way too strong.
And I think for me, the only reason they're not one of my favorite types is because when they go wrong, they go real wrong.
That's true. I will have to agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just. When are we gonna talk about ENFPs? No.
Yeah, I mean shit. We're getting
I'm ready.
there. But that's about it for this ENFJ episode. I hope the people liked it.
Yeah.
I hope you guys did too. Hopefully, we enlightened you in some way, shape, or form on the ENFJ and maybe more of their negative traits. I don't know. Maybe their negative traits are talked about. I don't really keep up with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely also subscribe to the podcast and follow
like
us on
this video.
social media. Yes, and comment. That's the thing. I mean, okay, I will say it's me. I need to get on this channel and start like replying to comments. I will have to say this.
we got some comments
I
out.
see all of the comments, and I would assume that Mac and Michelle also look at the comments as well. I have read every single comment that's on this channel. So I just need to respond to them, or like one of us needs to respond. But we do really appreciate the comments. And also, if you feel like these podcast episodes could be helpful for people, because especially for people that are starting out with type, or really any level, I think they could be very helpful.
Man, you just said that and it made me feel bad about the way I acted this episode. Because if someone was like, man, I'm on ENFJ, this cool podcast, like I would give some biased ass shit. But I feel like
they're probably not gonna give a shit about you because
Yeah.
they're
They're gonna be like, what is this?
they're your
INTJ?
supervisor.
What
They're
a
like,
shit type.
oh, those little INTJs.
Yeah,
I'm just
what a
They
kidding.
just
shit
don't
type.
even know.
They don't know how to use FE.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
But yeah, we
But-
respond to the comments. We're gonna get to them, people. I agree. I've read a lot. I feel like we responded the last couple of weeks. I think we've been getting better. Who knows? We've been improving, but this one's been going for a while.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Like and
Until
subscribe,
next time.
please.
All right.